All right, what is going on, everyone? And welcome back to Mets Weekly. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X for the latest news and rumors going on in Mets land all offseason long. Before we get into this breaking news that you can see on the screen, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for weekly episodes of our show that are now recorded live every Monday night, typically at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. For those of you watching or listening on playback and you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the chat right now, we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns. You feel like you're being ignored, you're not. You're just going to be starred. We'll probably answer them a little bit more as a mailbag since this is not our traditional show. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok for future content over there. For our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day. So without further ado, let's get into the breaking news. The saga is officially over. Pete Alonso has re-signed with the New York Mets on a 2-year, $54 million contract. Boy, did this take a long time. Did it take weeks and weeks and weeks and podcast episodes and tons of Twitter rants to get there? But we finally got there, and it is very, very close to pitchers and catchers reporting, and Pete Alonso is coming back. He will not be going elsewhere for 2025, and the Mets secure a better lineup. But you can't say this was not a tough road to get there. I'm here with Frank. We will be joined by Andrew in a little bit. He will be joining a little bit later, so you're going to have to look at that empty box. But as for a filled box on the screen, Frank, finally, it's done, and to be honest, the good thing about this, we can stop talking about it, because I've been seeing a lot of our viewers getting a little bit antsy and saying, okay, enough already. It's over. Alonso is back.
Yes, I mean, this lineup looks a whole lot better now. This is a big question mark that has now been answered, and I'm just very happy they're able to get it done. But I think, you have to start off with, we talked about Pete Alonso, like you said, for months, and one of the things we said was, the original extension they offered him before Stearns was here, 7 years, and he takes a 2-year deal. So that's not looking too great from the Alonso decision, where you had multiple years and now you might be looking at what's a 1-year contract. Yes, he got more AAV, so it's like, yeah, or he made more money in 2025 than he was going to if he accepted that extension. But I think overall, trying to net a 7-year deal is going to become even tougher when you're now going to be a year older. So you'll be a couple years older, actually, compared to when they offered it to him. So you talk about like the guaranteed money versus just trying to take the money now. I find that very fascinating. On our stream on Monday, I said it's going to come down to someone giving in a little bit, because both sides have a stance that they're not really budging from. And from what we heard was that Boris and Alonso wanted opt-outs, and the New York Mets did not want to offer any opt-outs. This deal, as it says right here on the screen, and you said at the top, it does have an opt-out. So eventually the Mets said, okay, you know what? We will do it. And there was a report that the Mets also offered a 3-year deal in addition to the 2-year deal. They stuck with the 2-year deal. Now, one of the things I found very interesting is that the New York Mets are giving him $30 million this year, which will make him the highest paid first baseman in all of baseball in 2025. So he got the highest AAV, which is something that a lot of players shoot for. I mean, that is something that is kind of a sweetener that a lot of times will get a deal done. When you say that you're going to be the highest paid player at that position, that's something that a lot of players will say yes to. So that was a smart move by the Mets. However, if they don't want him to opt out, I don't think that offering $6 million less in the second season is the best way to do that. Now, $24 million is still a pretty fair number for a first baseman, but I feel like if you're trying to prevent the opt-out, I don't think that was the way to go. If it was up to me, I might have actually done the reverse, where I offer him 24 this year and say, okay, well then if you want to stay with us, you do $30 million next year. Because what the Mets have found themselves in a situation in is that since the opt-out looks more appealing than staying, you're going to be in the same situation next offseason. Unless Alonso has a worse year than 2024, which would be hard to do by his standards because we know he's capable of being better. He's likely opting out, and you're doing this same song and dance once again next offseason, which, based off what Steve Cohen said at Amazing Day, that these negotiations have been horrible and it's been so difficult, I didn't think he'd want to do it again right away. But, I mean, they're able to get the job done. He is a New York Met, and it's a one-year deal, basically, so it does not affect long-term flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that it's a win as of right now for how exhausting it has become. I think that from both mindsets, you can see this from so many different angles because, yes, technically he's getting $27 million a year in the AAV range, and technically he's getting $30 million this year. To me, I kind of just see it as the luxury tax hit as to where it's going to be $20 million to the luxury tax hit. And then it's a $4 million raise if he wants to take it, because along with the signing bonus, if you're talking about total cash, Juan Soto, different situation. He's getting paid $121 million this year in total cash. With that, I mean, that's money that you can freaking live on for, like, I don't know, 40 years. And he's just getting that in 2025. So I think that from multiple angles, it's a solid deal overall. To get him at $20 million to the luxury tax, I feel like that probably benefits the Mets, kind of putting in themselves in that position with signing Minter and Winker in that supposed pivot that maybe he's possibly gone. Who knows? But I think that, right now they kind of constructed this into a way of, there's keeping their options open. And, right now, yes, there is this big song and dance with Pete Alonso, possibly next year if he has a good year. Personally, and this is a different story, and I'm not going to elaborate on it. I don't want to take anything away from Pete Alonso. Personally, as the clock continues to strike to very, very close to February 18th, I really could care less where Pete Alonso goes for 2026, because exactly who we are focusing on for 2026. Unless Pete Alonso repeats 2019, which is also a good thing for us.
He can't without a juice ball.
Even without a juice ball, if he repeats even 2022,
yeah,
it's possible that we look like World Series contenders. I mean, you don't know. Andrew, speaking of World Series contenders, because I know that you have won a lot. No, that was Tony La Russa. But anyways, Andrew, your favorite player is back. One of your buddies. How does it feel to be wrong? Because you said that he was leaving for the KBO. So what's wrong with you?
Well, I know.
Going on?
I mean, yeah, I'm happy it's over, and God forbid, it's gonna happen. Kids are, they're screaming. Polar bears are now being breeded in New York. Everyone is ecstatic, as you should be, and it's a 1-year deal, pretty much. Yes, there's the option, but again, like you guys have said, if everything goes well and he goes back to that 2022 form, go test the market again next year. And if that happens, like you said, hey, maybe we got a shot against the Dodgers. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But again, just the fact that this is over with, we don't have to talk about this guy again until his first slump in April. And it's going to be great. I got a month and a half of never saying or caring about his name. He's in the lineup. Everyone, WFAN is happy. The kids are happy. I'm somewhat happy, even though he's making $30 million this year. But who cares? It's $20 million and then a $10 million signing bonus. Who cares? At this point, I'm just happy it's over. David Stearns can now, if he wants to, add a bunch of minor league spring training invites and finish off these little finding touches, if he wants to or not. This headache is finally over.
Yep, that's all that matters right now. I think we've pretty much, as we've gone deeper into January, it's gone into February now. I think that now we're just happy it's done. We don't care anymore. To be honest, I was at a point where I was like, okay, you know what? I don't care where he goes. I just want Pete Alonso signed with a team. Don't care. I really don't. And the fact that he's back, it's good. It makes the lineup better. We don't need to talk about it for another year. Does it kind of feel like, the beginning of 2024 where we were talking about his contract year? Sure, but we also have other types of things as to where we've talked about it before. You already replaced Pete Alonso's production with Juan Soto. So they just needed to fill in first base. The fact that they were able to fill in first base with the best first baseman available, that's a good thing. At the current moment, there are, those trade options that were out there. It seemed like those have kind of died down a little bit. And, moving in, and putting in a first baseman and filling in the first base position or filling in the third base position, that being the main thing. Truro puts it here. Brett Baty's gone now. Brett Baty's out of the lineup. Brett Baty probably is in AAA. Barring any injury, barring any crazy that happens, Brett Baty is not in the opening day lineup anymore. So that's a good thing. He probably is the first guy up after an injury. It happens. But again, that's kind of the way that I feel in this situation. Because I think looking forward, there is that guy going on to the free agent market for first base, who I think is more of the shift of focus with how we've seen Pete Alonso perform recently. Right now, my biggest takeaway is the fact that I don't need to see Brett Baty in the opening day lineup. And for those of you who believe in Brett Baty or not, I don't. I personally think he is one of the worst, one of the worst, first round flops, I would say, we have had in a while. I'm not going to lie. I think that I see nothing. There's some guys that I see high floor, high ceiling. Some of the draft picks, even, the from way back when, if you're talking about Gavin Cecchini, there was some kind of promise there. Baty, I see nothing. Baty, I absolutely see nothing. But hey, I don't need to worry about that, at least for now. Anyways, Pete Alonso is back in the lineup, of course. We will get into some of your comments because we got some people coming through excited about the news. Aaron Judge, MVP, Yankees fan in here, or loyal Yankees viewer, saying congrats, saying it always felt like New York was the spot. Toronto was just a springboard, in my opinion. Made mostly zilch sense there. I think that it's more of just the way of desperateness for the desperation of the Jays to sign star power, because they're running out of relevance as of right now with the question of Vlad Jr. right now floating over their heads before he gets to free agency. The thing that I think really kept them in there towards the end was it seemed like Pete Alonso was just as desperate as the Jays, which was the main reason as to why it seemed like the only competition. But it didn't seem like Pete wanted to go to the Jays. We talked about this over and over and over again. He wants to come back to the Mets. Desperately, he wants to come back to the Mets. We've talked about it throughout the entirety of the offseason. He was coming back whether he liked it or not. I said it over and over. And even when we saw this pivot or this, that, or this, we've said it over and over and over again. Pete, go get a better offer. He never did. He never did because he wasn't going to. Because the Mets were the only team that valued him more than any of the 29 other teams because of what he did here. And I feel like they dragged this thing out and they, hung this thing out to a point where maybe they were a little bit too generous with the way that he has been producing recently compared to what he was doing at his peak. Obviously, there's, some concern there, but the Mets stood their ground. And I was really, really happy with how they handled this as compared to some Mets fans who are just like, Cohen's got the money, spend the money. What can you do? What can you do in this type of situation? And now we can go off to Port St. Lucie, watch baseball games that don't matter, and not stress. That's my favorite part of the year. March Madness, and then also I'm on a beach in Port St. Lucie, just relaxing, watching baseball that doesn't matter, seeing some young players, seeing all these other guys that are coming into the organization, and lightly filling in the roster in my head. So that's the way that I look at spring training, and now I can finally do that. I'm glad that this doesn't go into spring training. I am glad that the truck hasn't even left for Port St. Lucie, and this is done. I'm happy. I'm happy that it is done. We'll see what happens with Pete Alonso, how he does perform, because again, this is another big stage moment for him. Like, this is another chance. He got another chance here. So we'll see what happens. This is big for him. And, it's also big for the Mets too, which the lineup definitely provides a little bit more depth now, taking Beatty out and putting Alonso back in. And, it makes the lineup a little bit more dangerous. Let's just say that. And if somebody certain was not here, we probably would have an even better bat here as well, in addition to Alonso and Soto. But what can you say? Frank, I can swing it back to you if there's any comments that you want to point out, because I know that we've starred quite a few of them.
Yeah, no, we have a lot of people. I mean, like I was saying in the beginning, there is a good chance that Alonso does, in fact, opt out, and you made a mention to him. But the hope is that, like, if somehow the Mets got good production at first base this season while still getting Vlad next season, I mean, that would just be perfect timing. I mean, that really would be the best case scenario. And, it's up to the Blue Jays to get that deal done. And, I mean, if I'm Vlad, why would I want to take that deal? I mean, the only reason you take it was because that's the only team you've been with. But the team is not competitive. And number two, you want to see what else you can get there on the free agent market. Because, you see, especially see Pete get $30 million. Because, as we said, Vlad is quite a bit better than Pete offensively. I mean, he is a much more complete hitter. Puts up numbers that Pete, I just don't think is capable of putting up anymore. So I feel like Vlad could get a very good deal, and I just don't know if the Blue Jays are willing to offer that, what he's worth. So at his age as well, I mean, he just opens himself to a lot more possibilities. So if Pete's opting out and you have a better option on the free agent market this time around, and like if he doesn't play phenomenal again, like if he's just all right, Vlad still makes a ton of sense. So if they're somehow able to do both, I think that would end up looking really, really nice.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we'll see how they were going to be able to do that, because the Mets have always been in the right striking distance as to where they can be flexible in these manners, with that, evaluation year, you can say, in 2024 of how they looked at it going into the season. I think it all really lines up well. I think when it comes to, Pete Alonso's production in this lineup, he's going to have to act like the cleanup hitter here. He's going to have to be the guy that he struggled to be throughout the entire regular season last year. And, we'll see if we can get that type of production from him. Again, I don't know what the look of it is going to be. Maybe it's possible that Vlad ends up signing an extension. Maybe it does happen in Toronto. And maybe you do look at Pete Alonso as a possibility to, refresh and get a 4 or 5 year deal or something if he does perform. The Mets right now are kind of set up in that way where they can choose between, Pete and Vlad if all goes well or all doesn't go well. I think that they definitely could, especially with a certain someone whose money is going to be coming off the books. That is about the same amount of CBT hit as Pete Alonso, that being Starling Marte. So they definitely have some ways they can move things around in that way, and hopefully some of the young guys do break out. Maybe you see Drew Gilbert take a little bit of a role there. You never know. We hope that this lineup is a little bit deeper as compared to what we think it's going to be on opening day, because of them leaving, some leeway to some of the young guys. But, I think at this point, the Mets did what they had to do. They filled in this rotation this offseason. They brought in some proven guys in that bullpen. They, brought in Juan Soto, who automatically makes your team better no matter what. Alonso is back. Winker's back. That's awesome. The only weak spot I see it as is, again, in Starling Marte, which I guess we're just going to have to deal with. I really wish that the guy who just re-signed with the Diamondbacks and Randall Grichuk, that probably would have been a nice platoon with him and Winker. But we have another year of Starling Marte here, and it's looking a little bit more unlikely that he will be moved. We saw some stuff about it, but you just never know. Paul Revere saying, the guy on the horse, I think, saying, good move, getting it done before spring training too. Yep, that is really good. They definitely put it in that sweet spot. Green Lion saying, does signing Pete to this kind of money increase their odds of a contract dump such as Marte or McNeil? I think it's a little too late for it. I don't see it happening. I would love for it to happen. I would love to get rid of both of them. But I just don't think it's going to happen. And, you know, being realistic of how things were held up with Pete Alonso, maybe there is, you know, a flow of two other moves that are made by the Mets. You never know. But I do think that if there was any other big bat they were going to bring in, it was going to be Pete Alonso. We saw reports about, you know, whether it was from Andy Martino as well as Will Salmon and John Heyman. They talked about it. You know, they were already expecting the payroll to be higher than they want it to be. Kind of in that 330 to 340 type of range with the luxury tax bill. Obviously, with Steve Cohen's wallet, you're like, okay, whatever, who cares? But you know, there's also a principle involved as to where they don't want to bring down, you know, their draft compensation, and I understand not wanting to do something like that, especially with some of the guys that they have, you know, selected with those certain slots. The last time that we got out of the top 30. It wasn't the best pick, and I think that they do want to load up the farm system, and they have every right to do something like that. But at the end of the day, I'm just glad this is done, and we can stop talking about it. And, you know, I think that this was definitely for us, I think it was more of it was definitely a legacy on the line type of thing for us, because obviously we don't have sources at all. The three of us, we don't have any sources. We just come on and talk and yap about this team. But from process of elimination, from ways front offices view players, we all pretty much agreed that Pete Alonso is coming back. Like, Pete Alonso was coming back no matter what, considering how he is valued around the leagues, considering how all of these reports have come out. It was pretty easy to put two and two together. Andrew, I know that you've been, you know, a very big proponent of the value that you're getting from Pete Alonso. And I think that this has pretty much just been set as to where this is where he is valued in the game. And whether he means a lot to Mets fans or not, from the outside, he's a guy who's declined these last 2 years and is probably not a good long-term investment. And that's why probably turning down 7 years, $158 million looks kind of stupid at this current moment.
Yeah, and especially maybe for the extension part, and maybe this is a telltale sign, which I even thought, obviously, superstars are getting paid. If you're not a superstar, hell, if you're not even like a good player, and there's money being put on the table, you take it, because these front offices aren't valuing. All right, you're solid. Like, okay, like, do you have good parts of your game? Yeah, sure, but you're not. You know, the years of average guys getting 7-8 year deals, that's done. So, to a point of, if an average guy gets an extension, you better damn well sign it. With Alonso, again, it's to the point of, you saw there were cheaper guys available in the offseason. And what did those teams prioritize? It had everyone was like, oh, the Cubs and the Astros are gonna go after Alonso. Christian Walker, the Cubs are doing whatever the Cubs are doing. They're just kind of being weird. But the teams that you would have thought needed a first baseman, they pivoted to what the market value, if it's Carlos Santana or Cleveland or the Josh Naylor trade, if the Diamondbacks replacing Christian Walker, they did that first before Christmas it was done. And the fact of, well, everyone thought, oh, the best guy is Pete Alonso, and he's the guy that outplayed himself. And now, again, on December, February 5th finally signs. Again, the grand scheme of, yes, the orange and blue glasses for everyone. Well, he's our guy. Yes. Everyone said he was worth more to the Mets than any other team. The reality struck him right in the face. He has to come crawling back. Whoop-de-doo. It was kind of surprising that Heyman put out that he had 2 offers he could have chose, and he chose the 2-year deal over the 3-year deal. But again, if it was going to be an opt-out there, maybe that
I think that also goes with the reality check, to be honest.
Yeah.
Where he's like, oh, well, I'm turning 30. I'm going into my 30s, and I'm a first baseman. This is what's available for me. If I have another year like this, or if I have another great year like this, I'm still probably going to be out there available because, I don't know, maybe he learned from something. Obviously, who knows? I just, or maybe taking the 2-year deal instead of the 3-year deal. Alonso is just as, smart as we've put him out to be on this show.
I mean, I guess the only thing where maybe it's the 3-year deal, maybe it was a 2nd-year opt-out instead of the 1st-year opt-out, and maybe he thinks he takes the 2, he gets the year, gets to get out after this year. But again, that was something to think. Again, the fact that the Mets offered him again the 156, then they supposedly offered him 90, then they offer him 70, and he signs for 52. I mean, that's just the best way to put it. That's what he got. He got more than Christian Walker. That's how it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I think one of the other big things too is we were talking about what positions guys might play if Alonso's not here. There was something that Winker might have gotten some reps at first base, and if that was the case, then you could have made the idea of Marte playing more. It becomes more of a possibility, and you avoid having to use Brett Beatty. But now that Alonso is here for sure, that also means that Vientos is your third baseman for sure. Because we were talking about ideas oh, do they really view him as a third baseman? Do they view him as a first baseman? So now he gets to stay at third. Alonso goes to first. So the Marte trade is much more doable now because you, at least like you said, you have another bat, a much better bat. So it's much more doable. And then someone made the point of, you might have to put a higher end prospect to get rid of that Marte contract. And I think that's fair because we saw that the Mets did try to do it and no one's taken it so far. So if you really want him off the team, that's what you're going to have to do. And I think also from the standpoint of, we talk about how does your roster fit and making the most out of your bench spots. For Marte, he's not stealing bases. Like we said, he's not stealing base anymore. He's not providing power. He can't play center. He's not great in right. So it's what is he actually giving you on your bench? Now, they are yet to still get that right-handed complement to Winker. So I think until that happens, I guess he's here. Or maybe they would around they trade him and then get the other player. But similar to what we were saying is that a lot of guys are gone. I mean, off the top of my head, it's Duvall is a pitch a part-time player.
That could
maybe. It's possible, but I mean they might have to add a little more to actually get him off the books, or maybe pay off more of the contract like they had to do with McCann, literally pay most of it to then have someone take him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what this is going to look like in, transaction wise first, even before you get to Starling Marte, because they are at 40 man on the roster. So we'll see, when this does become official.
I think maybe
I don't know who it's going to be.
Azakar. I feel like he could be gone.
Azakukar?
Yeah. I think he could be gone.
Yeah.
If I had to guess,
he's infield, outfield.
Because they already DFA'd Luis De Los Santos.
Maybe it's Jared Young because he's a split contract. So,
and his position's really first base, so could be.
Probably makes sense in that way. Yeah. So we'll see. We just never know what they're actually going to look at in terms of forming up this roster. I don't know if there is any other moves on the way. I don't think that there are, but you never know. There could be a trade that does happen, but I just feel like that's going to be looked at as icing on the cake at this point. I feel like those two players here that are blocking a lot of opportunities at the current moment, those two players in Marte and McNeil, plus the luxury tax that they are pushing as well with their salaries, I feel like it probably would have been a little bit more flexible to happen. Are we trading Marte? I don't think it happens. I would love for it to happen. There's been talks about it possibly happening, but I don't see it happening this late in the offseason, unfortunately. And, I think Marte, maybe he does get moved, but maybe it's more of a deadline thing to kind of just dump the salary and move a roster spot at the deadline. We'll see how that does look. I don't know how you do pay that down. I don't see Jeff getting moved at all, as much as I would love for it to happen. It's just a little too steep in that way. Even though I would do it at right now, he's best friends with Alonso, so you can't upset him. But I get it, as to where, looking at it from, the upside standpoint of the young guys, because I do think that Jeff does block some things out as of right now. They just don't really have a choice right now. Like
but the thing is,
yeah,
if he gets off to know those first half struggles and you see Acuna and or Jet playing really well,
he'll just get off to a good second half. It's okay, because that's what he did this year. He'll do it again.
I feel like the leash is going to be shorter. I feel like it has to be. I mean, if you got two, especially Jet, like at one point was your number one prospect. I mean, why would you keep doing that? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we'll see if Jet will be able to stay healthy either way.
Yeah, that'll be a big thing.
He's a different part of the equation. We'll see what happens there. I think that they're pretty much done here. There could be a few minor league signings. That's about it. Or maybe there is a Marte trade, but that's really all that I possibly see. Like these types of, trading Marte, McNeil, and Beatty, like, it's easier said than done to get like starters for them. Like, it really is not something that I think is possible right now. It probably could have been if they had a little bit more solidified in that position and they didn't have this uncertainty with Pete Alonso in that infield regarding Beatty and even McNeil in that sense as well, of overall infielders that they do, because of the logjam they have in the infield, whether it is in the prospects or just at the higher level. But you never know. Maybe it is Ronnie Mauricio who comes back healthy and does well. Maybe it's Acuna who performs well in spring. Who knows what it will be? But we'll all be able to look at it, with our own eyes and see what decisions are made. I still think that by opening day, McNeil is going to be starting at second base. Like, I'm not happy with it at all. I think we all know I'm not happy with it. But it's pretty much the reality of the situation where they're kind of stuck in the matter of no other team is going to like just take him right now. Especially coming off of, just a 30-game sample in the second half. Then he gets hurt again. Like, I don't know where all of this fits in. All these guys are going to be acclimated somehow, like we've said with all of these prospects. I definitely would push for a Cease trade right now. I would push for it, because you have the whole spring training to do it. I mean, the Padres were working on it the whole spring training too last year to get Cease. So I mean, I don't know.
I think what would be most frustrating to me is that, like, let's say the Mets say, you know what, we're not going to get Cease. We're going to see how this goes. And maybe Montas doesn't work out, or Manaea has an injury, or Griffin Canning stinks, or Clemens to go to the bullpen. And then at the deadline, they overpay to get Cease, when it's like you could have got him in spring training for cheaper. That would be very, very frustrating, because I feel like you should just take the guarantee now and not bank on all these guys.
I don't have that fear. I don't. Just because of the cost we are expecting from, pitching, like we have said, I don't have that fear. The fear that I have is the Braves trading for him. That's the fear that I have. And I'm not going to say, it as, just, the Braves get everyone. That the Braves are going to try to extend him. and you know that there's going to be, you know, a look of that compared to what they lost out with Max Fried because of him being as like older than Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease is a few years younger than him. So they probably would be able to shell out that money in acclimating that in a way, you know, with, you know, all these guys on these cheap deals or whatever of what they're able to do. So I'm really hoping that that does not happen. But the Braves do have a lot of young pitching that is coming up. So hopefully they, you know, buck on to that. Exactly 6 years, 50 million, 1% donated to the Atlanta Braves Foundation, which is basically just money laundering, as we all know, in Anthopoulos Island. Yeah, listen, I think there are some people in the chat talking a little bit about the pitching staff and things like that. And, you know, like we have said, we'll see how, you know, how some of these guys adapt to this thing of this rotation. If they're looking at it from a 6-man rotation, I think that you can combine that production from multiple arms. And you don't necessarily need to go all in on an ace. And the only way that you need to do that is at the trade deadline. I feel like there's a better way to, you know, just keep this thing flexible right now. And I understand if they don't want to trade, you know, for a starter right now. But if they end up doing it, that would be great. That would be awesome. But building in those innings down the stretch of the season, I think is also a lot more important. Dylan Cease would be at the top of my list to help do that if they were to do that at the beginning of the season. But, you know, we'll see. But today is about Alonso, nothing and nothing more, right? Alonso is back because he has not gotten enough attention this entire offseason from Mets fans. Anyways, what would be the asking price for Cease look like? It seems like the latest report was 3 top 25 prospects. We don't know which one they are. Andrew, you said something about them liking our prospects more than the Cubs, something like that. I don't know which ones we're all specifying here. You know, I try not to get very globally attached to pitching, just because of how easy a pitching career can go so quick. So that's the main reason as to why I'm not looking as to where I have to go in on this entire pitcher and not be flexible in that way. You know, right now they have this rotation built around, you know, some deferred money with Sean Manaea, of course, where he's getting number 3 starter money. Kodai Senga, healthy, he is your starting pitcher 1, and he's making $15 million a year. He's going to be here for that entire 5-year contract. I think that this rotation is going to produce a lot more than people think it will. And you call me crazy. Andrew's laughed at me before at that, because there's not the sexy picks right now. But I do think that this will be addressed somehow, and it will be acclimated somehow to where, you know, the way that they want in that kind of regard. Nick's saying that the Mets are obviously over the 3rd tier Cohen tax. We should just trade for Cease and fortify this team as much as possible. We are already going to be penalized. Why not go full throttle? It makes sense to want to do that. I get it. And again, the one thing that I do, you know, argue in that sense is, yes, there is an all-in button that you want to push right now with Pete Alonso only guaranteed to be here for 2025. You signed Juan Soto. Lindor's not getting any younger. I understand it there. But I think that this team, it's kind of more of a mindset of it's built around Lindor and Soto right now. Alonso's seen as, you know, that third piece to that big, you know, to that big 3. And, you know, we'll see how they configure that. I think, you know, with 162 games ahead of you, I understand not wanting to trade for starting pitching right now and then being comfortable in that way and leaving some of the gateway and replaceable pieces, for some of the young guys, whether it is Sproat, whether Tidwell gets his footing in AAA, has a late season call-up. I get wanting to do something like that. But again, if this team at the deadline, let's say they are on pace for possibly, let's say 101 wins that Billy Epler got magically, right? Let's say they're on pace for that. I definitely push to get a starting pitcher at the deadline, no matter what the cost is. I definitely would look at that, and it all really just has to do with how these guys are acclimated to the roster. Also, a way of trading for a guy like Dylan Cease. The Mets farm system right now is not in the condition as to where it's looked at so fondly to other front offices, whether it ranks high or not, guys are in the top 100 or not. All of those, a majority of that top 10 that we had last year, they need to kind of get their value back up because of the injuries that they had last year. So it's probably more of the give and take with the trade talks right now. I think, yes, Sproat we'll see. McLean probably not. But yeah, we'll see what the look of it is right now of how they kind of configure this rotation. And I don't know how they, flip things around. But we'll see what the rest of the roster looks like. We're kind of running out of the filler positions. I'm going to guess that Jared Young is the casualty here for Pete Alonso. And they have a few other guys who may be on split contracts that maybe will clear waivers if you do send them down. But overall, I'd say that a majority of this 40-man roster, there's major league experience on here, and maybe you do get some quality upside somehow, aside from that second baseman we have that wears number 1 because he's so conceited. Right, Andrew? Right? Let's see. Stem saying Pete back. Meh. Listen, I love a good troll, but I think, to be honest, it doesn't really matter if he's back or not with the Mets. To me, it's the fact that this is over. That's it. I'm glad that this is done. I'm glad that we can move on. I'm glad we can talk about other things. We can also, later on this month, we can grade some off-season moves as well on our show. And we can talk about some, spring training headlines as well of what we're going to see going into camp.
I'm just thinking, one of the good things, the fact that it's a 2-year deal and not just a straight up 1-year deal for $30 million, is that I'm hoping Pete doesn't press as much, because it's like, if he doesn't do well, he's still under contract for next season and he could try again. So it's not like this past season where it's like this is his only shot at getting a big deal. Like, if it doesn't work this year, he still has next year too. So maybe he's a little more relaxed. And again, like this time around, he has Juan Soto in front of him. So he really, we talked about the protection he had this past season, but it's much better now. You're talking about Juan Soto instead of JD Martinez or Starling Marte. Like, he's going to have a lot of opportunities. You have Lindor at MVP caliber. You have Soto in there. And then what I wonder is just like, where does Vientos fit in the lineup? Where does Nimmo go in the lineup? Because now things get a little different. I don't want to take Lindor out of the leadoff spot. And to me, I think Soto should stay in that 2 hole. That's where he was with the Yankees. As much as you paid him, he needs a lot of ABs. So you got 1-2. Now you got to decide where you're going to go from there. Could you go Nimmo 3? He needs to bounce back if I'm putting him top 3.
I would put Nimmo 3. I think he's decent. I think he's a good hitter there. And then also you can really set up a lot of nice things for Alonso if he can start to drive in runs the way that he was able to do. Because you have Lindor who can steal you some bases, get on base, good plate discipline, just an all-around good hitter. Yeah, Juan Soto, who is basically a robot at the plate and will not swing at a single non-strike whatsoever. And then, you have Nimmo, who good pitch selection. We know he always gives you those competitive ABs. Maybe he does. Maybe he does bounce back. Maybe he doesn't. Personally, I think he's going to be fine, and people are just worrying about him from the health standpoint, and think that it's going to probably, shell off in that way. But I'm not really worried about the condition of Brandon Nimmo's ability to produce because his foot just went all fucky on him in the second half of the season. So if he feels good, he feels good. It all really just has to do with him staying on the field. That's literally it. I don't think there's really a concern of him. Well, is he going to produce? Is he going to bounce back? Like, because he's still, to me, he's still, Brandon Nimmo, and he does his Brandon Nimmo thing until we start to see a shitty trend in that way. I think that, Nimmo is going to be fine. And then just overall the data from Brandon Nimmo from last year, it still was fantastic. So it's not like, he's trying to bounce back and he needs to go back to something. But, last year he was hitting the ball harder than Pete Alonso. So, and he was, for a second hitting the ball harder than Francisco Lindor, and then Francisco Lindor kind of overtook him. So I'm not really worried about what's going on with Brandon Nimmo here. I know a lot of people are, but I think that there's going to be a little bit more give and take into this offense now. Green Lion saying Nimmo is underrated as a clutch guy. It seems like the postseason opponents were more scared of him than we give credit. And listen, I think, Brandon Nimmo, we talk all about Alonso. Some people talk about Jeff McNeil because of his accomplishments and everything, and all these homegrown guys. Brandon Nimmo has been Mr. Consistent. So, I think year in and year out, we've seen a really good player from him. And if he stays healthy, he's going to be productive. Yes, he's going into his 30s. But overall, I think, it's not something of my concern when you're, Brandon Nimmo, who's continued to prove this way and seems to go in an uptick anyway with the overall results that he was getting compared to what maybe was expecting. He was banged up for half of the season, a near 3-win season, no matter what. And it seems like projections have him even just at 50th percentile and not even in a full season to get back into that 120 to 125 bat. At 50th percentile. So at 100th, it's probably 140 or 150, considering how much of an off-base machine that he is, and considering how his power is kind of elevated later on in his career into his 30s. So we'll see what happens there. And here's a stat. If you are worried about it, here's a stat that'll make Frank smile here. It was a career high in runs batted in for him in 2024, even though he did not have the best season. So again, he came through. It's not something that you can say about the guy who has a picture on the bottom right last year. Listen, there's going to be hell to pay, let's just say, if Pete Alonso does not get off a good start. But like we've said, we are glad it's over. It's done. It's finished. Thank God. Yay. All right.
Yeah, that was the big polar bear in the room, was to get that sorted out. Yeah. But they definitely went quite a bit over that tax. So that's why, Steve Cohen had said it from the beginning when it talked about the luxury tax was, if you're going to go over, you go way over. So it's like, if you're already in there, you might as well just kind of keep going, so to speak.
I don't know if there is a draft pick hit yet. I think it all really depends on.
Well, the draft pick won't be traded anyway, so there's no point in really worrying about it. You're just gonna stay there and chill. Yeah, we don't trade prospects here. We don't do that.
All right. Well, every time we trade one, it's always the worst trade known to man, like PCA for Baez. So that's
different regime.
Can't do it. You can't do it. But there's more of a reason as to why these guys aren't getting moved. But nobody wants to hear that. I can't keep spoon feeding things in that way. But damn. Okay. We also have the NBA trade deadline going on right now, so we're probably getting in that way. It looks like Andy Martino has some death in his eyes on SNY. He really
10-yard line. What happened?
Yeah. Derek Carr was the quarterback. That's what happened.
Exactly. Steve Cohen came in with the pick six.
Yeah. The Jesse Bates pick six. All right. Let's see. Nick saying great points. I see the roster now solidified with protection for Soto. We now have a setup man for Diaz and a more complete bullpen. Just worried about the rotation. It feels like that lives and dies by the pitching lab. Cease would really round out the team perfectly, giving us a bona fide ace. We could wait for the trade deadline to see where we are at. But right now, we just need to compete with the Cubs for Cease as the opposed to the deadline where it might be a dogfight for him. That is definitely the case for trading somebody like Cease. But I don't know how many bullets they want to waste on it right now for a rental. I think that's pretty much if he had 2 more years left, I think the Mets would be 100% more aggressive in that stance. Michael King, I think they just added like a mutual option for him, similar to what the Mets did with Chris Bassett a few years ago. But yeah, I think, I don't know. Maybe they do end up making a trade. Who knows? There was there was an expectation that Pete Alonso is going to sign elsewhere. So you never know if it's unlikely or likely.
My thing too is that like if the reason why the Padres are trading Cease is a salary reason, they wouldn't want to trade him as much during the deadline because they've already paid half of it. Whereas now it's like you're taking the whole salary. So I feel like right now Padres being more of a rush to trade him, and if the Mets let's say have an injury, the Padres have the leverage because they're saying, oh well, you really need our guy now because your guy's out. So, and other teams are a hot start, another injury away from having more suitors available who have better farm systems than the Mets do and are much more aggressive in trading prospects than the Mets are. So it is so much easier to do it now than later.
It is very easy to do it now and later, but I also see it as of more of a view for Dylan Cease's, if the Padres are struggling or if the Padres are not in that contention and they can't compete. I think that it's more of just the desperation to get something back for him because they know they're going to lose him in free agency no matter what. So I think that's the reason as to why they're probably going to end up trading him, but they kind of want to just cut salary as of right now, more of just because of outside situations. Luis Castillo is another guy that is something I would be all over right now to kind of give you that 1A, 1B with Senga because I don't think Castillo's not in, that upside level compared to somebody like Dylan Cease, who's a little bit younger. But Castillo would be a great pickup in my opinion.
Still provides the stability, and what we're really looking for is the consistency and just not being a question mark and just durability overall. He would still fit that, but for Seattle, I mean, they're a solid team, so they have no reason to trade him yet. They need to have a really bad start and the rest of their division to play well, which it features the Angels and the Athletics. So, I mean, no matter what, you're already off to a good start. So, I mean, they always have a little bit of an advantage in that sense. We know how brutal the Central could be. So, it's like a lot of times in the American League, you could be just kind of all right, which is where Seattle kind of falls with their lack of offense, and they're still in the mix. So, I just don't see why they would have a reason to trade him.
Yeah, and just wait until we become, the NBA and have a 20-team playoff. I mean, there's going to be nobody available at the trade deadline. So you just never know. More games, more money. So that's kind of how it's looked at in this league. But we'll see. Truro saying they wouldn't trade Cease at the deadline unless they're awful. If they're good mid-year and they trade Cease, that'll destroy the team chemistry. I mean, sure. Yeah. I mean, again, it really all has to do with, the dispute of the Padres. If they underperform, we've seen them underperform before.
Well, the Padres on the flip side,
not getting any younger,
They have the Dodgers in their division. They have an improved Arizona Diamondbacks. And now, I mean, the Mets are set up in a good spot. You already know Phillies and Braves are in there. I mean, the Central, you know, you got the
Who the hell
Brewers.
knows?
Everyone, the Cubs maybe could surprise us, but you know, right now they're already like third place when the season starts, so that's not ideal at all.
Yeah. Well, Pablo Lopez is somebody you can consider as well. I
But,
still
they're fighting
would,
for first in that division.
you know, if Toronto is still as shitty as I probably expect them to still be, I still think Toronto's not going to be that great. Maybe I eat my words, who knows? But there's just constant underperforming there. I would knock on the door for Gosman. I mean, I would wanted to get him. Years ago, it seemed like the Mets were interested there. So maybe there is some kind of connection in that way, because he does have another year of control after this year. So you never know. Because I think that there's, money that they probably do end up wanting to move to sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or even have a chance at signing Vladimir Guerrero Jr. But with Pete Alonso off the board, they did defer money with Anthony Santander, so you just never know. Ricardo's saying, is there a chance that Christian South pitches this year? He is talking like he might. I wouldn't count on it. I would not count on it. Tommy John surgery and the internal brace, it pretty much
it happened
like
for mid to late of the season as well. So that
takes you out pretty much the entire year.
Yeah.
And then there's a little bit longer of a rehab process in that way. So you're probably looking at, no matter what, you're going to see, he'll be back probably for spring training next year. Like, that's when he'll be back on the mound. Even after that, they're probably going to keep it slow because of the innings management they had on him. It might take a little bit longer than you would like to see Christian Scott back. Which really, really sucks. And, we also do have a little bit of that concern, with some of our other young guys. I mean, Brandon Sproat, it may not sound like a bad thing, but it kind of is a bad thing. He's never had Tommy John before. So that's another thing as to where if they end up managing his innings, if he's able to, pitch a certain workload, we'll see. He'll definitely get a look in spring training. Absolutely. But, we'll see how they, remain flexible in that way. I don't think that they are leaning on Sproat to be incredible. I think they're just kind of seeing what they have internally and kind of building this thing to the deadline, because they haven't really built anything up from the bottom to the top yet. So we'll see. Sonny Gray and Helsley package at the deadline is a dream. It could happen. It could. I think Sonny Gray's a little bit more possible than Helsley getting moved. Actually, no. Yeah, because Helsley's
a rental. I want nothing. Go look at Sonny Gray's next year AAV. Like, we're complaining. Go look at his deal for next year and look how much he's making. Jump from this shit or next. I'm passing on Sonny Gray.
Well, it all
and
really
his age
depends
is increasing quickly.
It all really depends on what the Cardinals are willing to cover, because it's not that long of a deal, right?
It's 2 years, but I think it jumps like $35 million. I'll confirm in a second.
Yeah. I mean, they're probably just looking to shed the Nolan salary. Caution, high waves ahead. The richest man in our chat with the $10. Thank you so much. Saying time to celebrate. I guess that he is saying this in line to Nick Madrigal signing with the Mets. Very big impact.
The Knicks trading Jericho Sims. That's what we're celebrating. Sims is off my team. Jericho Sims is gone. Yeah. Anyways. But thank you, Caution, of course. The very, very rich man spending money on these 3 talking heads. Do we still have Joey Lucchesi? No, we do not have Joey Lucchesi. He signed with the Giants. Yeah, he signed with the Giants. He was a addition from the last regime. So it was most likely the Mets weren't really like on, tap to do something like that. $35 million in 2026 for Gray. Yeah, never mind. Good call. $35 million? And the $30 million club option for the next year. Yeah.
Why?
That's John Mozeliak for you.
That's some deal he got, man. Wow.
That's stupid. Who is this?
Yeah, Another NBA blockbuster. Nice. Just fucking love these late night blockbusters. Nice.
Who is his agent? Bo
It doesn't say-
McInnes, man. You are a smart man.
Yeah, I don't know how the hell
You
he got
are a
Lindsay Lohan.
smart man. Wow. 36 years old, making $35 million. That is insane. And a $5 million buyout for the 2027 club option. Jesus fucking Christ. That is aggravating. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, he would be
Wow.
37 in 2027. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
36-year-old making $35 million. Like, Sonny Gray is a solid pitcher, but he ain't worth that. So yeah, there would probably have to cover some of that money, but even if the Mets were to acquire it with Steve Cohen's pockets, they're gonna ask for him
reliever
to
is
cover the
not-
whole thing.
A reliever is not the sweetener to take on that deal. We've already done that once.
Did we?
Yeah, sadly.
Sadly.
we
Excuse
gave
me, that
him
was the greatest thing to ever happen.
And then we gave that reliever over $100 million. So,
Let's see. What the fuck? Oh, Ingram.
Ingram to Toronto.
All right. Okay.
You guys just
Interesting. That's odd. Okay. Yeah.
scared of
Pete should have
Osborne.
hired
Come on.
Sonny's agent. Yeah. Brian Wu. That's another one. Yeah. Could happen. I don't know. It really is just more of a look of with the pitching, and people are not going to like this with how this position has become with an accelerated game. Develop your own arms. You don't like it? Develop your own freaking arms. I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't know what to tell you. But, yeah, Epler would have salvated over that Sonny Gray contract. He would have paid them to pay it. I mean, he would have paid double or something like that. He did something stupid. Anyways, Alonso's back. For those of you who don't know, 2 years, $54 million, and a player option for the second year, getting $20 million in salary plus a $10 million signing bonus, and of course a $24 million player option. And we'll probably on our next podcast episode kind of talk about, the look of the Mets lineup, how we would form this thing around. We'll see if there's any other moves or any other things. It doesn't seem like there's any other reports that are coming out right now that, the Mets aren't done or the Mets are still looking at some stuff. I feel like there's still some opportunistic looks for it, but right now I'd say that this is the last major move, and it definitely was an impact one. And, there still is a lot to prove for Pete Alonso. But again, if he were to prove it, that would be a good thing for us. That would put us back into the big winning ways. Because let's not forget, the Mets won last year, went all the way to the National League Championship Series, in spite of Pete Alonso not playing to the standards we're used to. So what happens if he does? That would be cool. And then you also have that guy Juan Soto too, which is pretty cool. That's a good add-on. Let's just say that. Quite the eventful off-season, and quite a way to, go out with a bang here if this is the final one. And even though it is at the buzzer, we're very close to pitchers and catchers reporting. I'm just glad this conversation is done. I am glad it is over. It didn't occur to me now. We will get Williams versus Alonso Part 2 in the regular season of the Subway Series. Yeah, that could happen. We'll see. Maybe if Soto doesn't take him deep first, you never know. Let's see. Surprise trade coming. I can smell it next few days. Johnny, we hope so. Be more to cover, more to talk about. And then also, we know that this rotation's just awful. So we'll see what else they do in that way. And if it ends up being a Marte trade, if Marte ends up getting traded, I want to see how they acclimate that. I'm kind of interested to see what they do end up doing to kind of manage that in an asset form. But right now, I think that right now it's kind of lined up as he is going to be on the opening day roster. So, we'll see.
It'll be fun though.
All
Richard
right.
brings up a funny one. I mean, that would that would get some benches clearing. I mean, you cannot be hitting the $800 million man. That is just insane.
You really want to fight the Mets right now with, a big guy like Pete Alonso. You also have Winker and Siri. Those are some bad mofos right there. Those are some bad men. All right, and then we also know that Ryan Stanek could be nuts too. Who else? I don't know. We've got some edge on this team. We have some
Jeff
edge.
McNeil's got a golf club.
Yeah, Jeff McNeil's just going to scream from the dugout railing because he's a wuss. If the Mets get into a brawl, it will bring them together. Boy, I hope so. I hope it does. I hope it does. I hope there's some fire. But I'm also hoping that we don't have guys who do get hit as much as they have recently as well. Because that has taken some guys out of the lineup because of that. So we'll see. Yeah. All right. I think we're gonna stay on for about 5 or 10 more minutes. We'll answer some of your comments in the chat below, and then yeah. So getting very, very close to spring training. Very, very close to pitchers and catchers reporting. And it's that time of the year where the baseball season is young. So we'll see. Let's see. Midlife crisis for Jeff McNeil. He got paid. He'll be fine. He'll be okay. Anyways, let's see if there was anything that we missed on here. Yeah, let's see. Yep. Christine earlier said a good thing that about this, we don't have to see Beatty. Thank goodness Vientos stays at third. I agree. Vientos needs to play a position and to continue his career. Again, that's one of the main reasons as to why even back then, whether you're talking about 2022, that it's like, oh, let's just call him up to be the DH. Like, that's not good for a player's development at all. It just isn't. Hitters are big hitters, but for them to play a position, it also allows them to expand their game and also gives them the confidence to continue. That's, that type of, that's the type of feeling, that we have going into that sort of, I don't know. I lost my train of thought. Wow. It's getting late, guys. We're
You're just so
8
excited.
minutes to midnight over here. Yeah. Yeah. Whew. Okay. Some other news that we can just spew out here. I'm pretty sure Dylan Covey and Luis De Los Santos were on the 40-man roster, just cleared waivers and outright to Syracuse.
Wow. No one claimed either.
So I guess with Covey being on the split contract, that probably is a little bit less attractive for guys on the waiver claim. And so the AAA depth gets a little bit deeper, and we don't have to waste a 40-man roster spot on that. Again, Jared Young, the guy that does go, in corresponding to Pete Alonso. But, we will see what that will be going forward. And we're all ready for spring training. We're getting very, very, very close. This offseason definitely went slow. It was slow. There still are guys out there. Let's see what happens with Bregman. I think now that Pete Alonso's off the board, Now we can shift.
I wonder if Toronto really jumps on that now and just kind of offers something dumb.
I saw the Cubs. Involved with that too.
And they want to be the Astros 2.0. Have him and Tucker run it together.
Nice.
And Presley. Don't forget they're like the dump.
Yeah.
How Toronto is Cleveland's cap dump team. The Cubs are the Astros cap dump team. we got to get one of those.
I think we're the Yankees. We have a lot of Yankees.
Actually, we're kind of the cap dump team right now because we have the money to do it. That's the thing. Steve Cohen's got the money. He got it.
Yeah. So one of the other things I kind of find interesting, like let's say for the sake of argument, they do trade Marte. Someone I could see since they already offered him a contract, probably Mark Canha. I feel like that might be where they would go that route. It's like they already offered him a deal. Maybe if Marte's gone, they offer him like more of an actual guarantee contract. I could see them doing something like that. Because a lot of these other guys, I mean, they are just a lot of them are on the older side for sure. I mean,
could there be a even though we saw the connection to it just because in regards to Pete Alonso, but could this be where if they end up trading Marte, which again I don't think is going to happen, could this just be Justin Turner, like something like that? Like I mean he's old,
I don't know if they could get him as a
lefties,
part-time player
it's not awful.
Though. I feel like someone would offer him more as a full-time DH.
If they have, it probably would have been announced already. Like that's the thing. I don't know. I hope it's not just like one of those JD Martinez holdouts. Yeah.
Well, he is still out there.
He still is out there. So yeah, well,
I don't know
what they may do.
A lot of these other guys. I mean, we've kind of seen them in Met uniforms before. And they're just like a lot on the older side.
We saw Turner in a Mets uniform.
Long time
Didn't look
ago.
like the Turner that it is now. But
definitely not. And a lot of the guys too that are available also left-handed hitters as well. So that also kind of limits what you're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, you kind of need like a right-handed back because you did bring back Winker. So it's the DH platoon right now with Winker and Marte, which is not, it's just very weak in my opinion, but. Hey, what can you do? But as we are looking at it from Fangraphs, they have Pete Alonso wearing number 20 for us. Why? Francisco Lindor leading off on Fangraphs. Juan Soto in the 2 spot. They have Alonso at the 3rd position. Cleanup goes to Brandon Nimmo. It's probably to split up the lefties, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And then 5 position is Mark Vientos. 6 is DH Winker, as the platoon. Francisco Alvarez is batting 7th. Jeff McNeil is 8th. And Jose Siri is 9th. So if you see Francisco Alvarez improve and get, a lot of help from the genius Eric Chavez, you got a deep lineup. You got yourselves a deep enough lineup. How about Mike King from the San Diego Padres? We saw the Mets attached to him this week. But again, we'll see how they look at that in regards to, who's healthy and who's not. I think the only thing that's really keeping this team back or this rotation back from, actually being a non-weakness is basically just health. That's literally it. I really do believe that. And some may say this rotation is weak. I get it. But a 6-man rotation as to where if you're, plugging in guys who can also be in long relief into the bullpen, Griffin Canning is one of them. Jose Budo is one of them. Blackburn maybe is your 6th starter. Maybe Griffin Canning outperforms Paul Blackburn, and that's the way you form the rest of that rotation in spring training. You never know, but a 6-man rotation for Kodai Senga, of course, catering to that, keeping him healthy. The burnout of Sean Manaea in that way. We'll see. We have some injury concerns with Frankie Montas recently. That's been a thing. To be honest, one of the probably the biggest Iron Man that has been here, like, it's probably been Peterson. He also had a hip surgery before going into the season. So he has a brand new hip. just like some of the guys in the nursing home. So maybe there's something there. And then, of course, Clay Holmes.
I mean, I'm glad the Mets were able to get this Pete thing done right before my bedtime. Like, I was about to go to bed. I mean, we were pushing right up against it, and they got it done at the buzzer. So shout out to the Mets for not doing it at 3 a.m. like they like to do with some guys.
We spoke it into existence. We just put out a clip about the Pete Alonso situation saying that he will re-sign with the Mets. I even got a few responses saying that we jinxed it and he's going to the Blue Jays. So guess what, guys? We have sources. Anyways, but we will see what is in store. I think I would say they're pretty much done. I would say that. But you never know. I don't know if it's a possibility, but maybe there are some other trades, because there's moves I would make. There's definitely moves that I would make internally and externally, to set them up for the season here. But overall, pretty good productive off season. You can't say it wasn't. And as for you guys in the chat, we asked you what would you grade the Mets offseason with Alonso being back. 74% of you are giving it an A. 23% of you are giving it a B. 3% of you are giving it a C. 0% of you are giving it a D to an F. So, I'm curious to see who it was that gave him the C. That's probably some Toronto fan. I don't know if you were looking to sign Pete Alonso. But again, he was there for the taking. He was there. It's not like we didn't dangle him for the entire time. But there's not going to be any rioting in the streets for Pete Alonso leaving. He's back. Okay. He's back with the Mets for 2025, and we can stop talking about this shit.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the fans were chanting literally at the Mets brass at Amazing Days, so at least they don't have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I think the ballsy move to address it as publicly as they did, the way that Steve Cohen said, basically called out Scott Boras. That was a risky move, but they knew that they had all the chips. They knew that they had all the cards the whole time. We talked about it the whole time of his diminishing market. They had the qualifying offer over him. He's been here. He obviously wanted to be here. The first base market, his age, his declining. I mean, we talked about it the entire time as to where I keep saying it. He was going to come back whether he liked it or not. And look what just happened. He's back. It may have taken a lot of time for it to happen, but it happened. And now the lineup looks a lot more complete, and we can, criticize Pete Alonso's play if he plays like crap again another day, because right now we get to go to sleep knowing that Pete Alonso is back. We don't need to see Brett Beatty in the lineup. And also, the reunification of a great friendship between Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil, right, Andrew? Right? That's all that we really, really care about right now. Give me your thoughts on that, and then we'll finish it up.
I mean, think about it. You got a polar bear and a squirrel, two of the most random ass animals in the animal kingdom. They're best friends. They're gonna go back and sing Kumbaya. Probably gonna watch Jungle Book, and we're all gonna be happy. So there you go.
Yeah. And then let's just say that the Phil Collins soundtrack of Jungle Book and those soundtracks that he did, they're great. They're elite. Phil Collins is an all-time great. Anyways, what? I mean, you're giving me an opening there. Anyways, I think we're going to wrap it up here. One more time, the Mets have re-signed Pete Alonso to a 2-year, $54 million contract with a player option worth $24 million for 2026. He will get $20 million as his base salary and an additional $10 million signing bonus. He is back. The saga is done. For those of you in here, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel and turn on post notifications to know when we do go live, which is regularly on Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for our live podcast episodes. For those of you who do not know, we officially have a Mets Weekly hotline. You can call into our show at any time, 24/7. 845-208-5677. That is 845-208-5677. We want to hear your thoughts, and you could be featured in the next episode of our podcast. But as for right now, we are going to log off. I'll give these guys their final say and their final notice as we get closer and closer to spring training. Pitchers and catchers reporting. Andrew, I will start with you. Your best buddy is back, and we can stop seeing some comments about your comments on him because I don't know how many of them I can fight off.
I mean, again, it's the second best thing that's happened. Jericho Sims is gone. This guy's back. Whoop-de-doo. Go trade for Giannis tomorrow, Knicks. Go get Kevin Durant. You know, the NBA is going on fire. MLB, if free agency's happening. Life's good. I got chicken fingers I've been waiting to eat. Let's get this over with.
Before I go over to Frank, Josh Heshka, the Submariner, was traded to the Phillies for cash considerations, had Tommy John surgery, came back, had a solid season in AAA, but maybe that was what the cash considerations did. They got us over the hump for Pete Alonso. You never know. And it looks like Josh Heshka, he's got himself a sense of humor, and he said that the cash considerations for me got this deal over the finish line. So that deserves a like and a retweet from me. Frank, I will go to you. Finally, you can go into your old man bed and relax because Pete Alonso's back.
Yes, it's very important. I got to make sure I get to bed right away. But, I mean, the big thing is that, like, at least anything they do now in the offseason is basically a bonus. I mean, they've got their starting 9. They have their starting rotation. They have pretty much their bullpen. Like, they have a set team with the way it is. So now it's more so just like, if you get anything else, that's just gravy. That's just a bonus. Obviously, I love the starting pitcher trade. I mean, to me, that would make it A++ if they could pull that off. I feel like you really accomplish a lot. What I like overall is that they maintained most of what they had last season, but also upgraded and added some other things. So, I mean, they kind of were able to do both. I mean, one of the things, like, you see the difference between the ownerships that, like, 2015, we didn't really get much better after reaching the postseason. Like, we kind of went lateral in certain senses and kind of went a different direction, and it didn't pay off. Injuries kind of derailed that whole thing, but still, I just like that they maintained what worked for the most part, and then, I mean, you added freaking Juan Soto, so, like, they are quite a bit better than they were last season.
Yeah, even 2022, they kind of said, oh yeah, this team's perfect. They won 101 games. What can we improve on? They went farther last year, and they look to improve their roster. Take notes, Billy Epler, if you ever get a job again. Our guy Top Bunk, one of our good friends here, saying shout out to us. Pete is back, absolutely. And we are going to wrap it up here. And for one last thing to make Frank smile and go to bed. Another piece of news, Harrison Bader off to the Twins. If you guys did not see that, he has a 1-year deal with like a mutual option for the second year. So big loss, but officially passing the torch down to the GOAT himself, Jose Siri. So we'll see. But thank you so much, Harrison Bader, for the year of torture you gave to my dear beloved co-host to my right on the screen. And, we will see what else is in store for this off season. We're getting closer and closer to pitchers and catchers reporting and spring training. It's a fun time of the year, stress-free, get to watch baseball that does not matter, but it's baseball nonetheless. And we're getting very, very close to it. So we will hopefully see you guys next time on Monday. Maybe we see you before then if they make another move. Who knows? But Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern time, as per usual. And of course, one last thing, right, Andrew? The one thing that Pete Alonso says all the time, LFGM, right? Let's go Mets, or let's fucking go Mets. Hey, he says it. It's so cool. He won 2 home run derbies. Anyway, we'll see you guys next time. One more time, Pete Alonso is back. 2 years, $54 million with a player option, $24 million for 2026. We will see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Peace out.